The rain was merciless that afternoon, hammering down on the empty streets like 1,000 needles piercing the silence. Cars splashed through puddles, headlights cutting through the gray haze. On the side of a lonely road near the old bridge, a young pregnant woman stumbled forward, clutching her belly, her breath ragged, her face pale as if life itself was slipping away with each step. She looked around desperately for help, but no one stopped. Her soaked hair stuck to her face, her trembling hand reaching out as if pleading with the universe to just give her one more chance. And then, her knees buckled. She collapsed into the muddy street, the rain swallowing her faint cries. Just when it seemed like she would fade into nothing, an old pickup truck screeched to a halt. If you believe that one act of kindness can change a life, hit like, share this story, and subscribe to Stories of Kindness right now. Because what happened next will remind you that even strangers can carry the light we never knew we needed. The man who stepped out of the truck was Aaron Blake, a 35-year-old single dad who was already fighting his own battles. His shirt was damp from the downpour, his eyes weary from another long day at the construction site. He had promised his 6-year-old daughter, Nora, that he'd be home early to make her favorite soup, a promise he was already late to keep. But when he saw that woman lying unconscious on the roadside, something inside him stopped him from driving on. Maybe it was the memory of his late wife, who had once been pregnant with Nora, who had once needed help too. Without hesitation, Aaron ran through the rain, knelt beside her, and gently lifted her face. "Hey, hey, can you hear me?" he whispered, brushing wet strands from her forehead. Her lips quivered, her eyelids fluttered open for a moment, and she whispered something barely audible, a name, perhaps, before losing consciousness again. Aaron could see the exhaustion in her features, the way her trembling hands rested protectively over her belly. There was no time to waste. He carried her to his truck, his arms straining but his heart firm. He covered her with his jacket and drove straight to the nearest hospital. The nurse at the reception, shocked to see a drenched man carrying a pregnant woman in his arms, immediately called for help. Aaron waited outside the emergency room, pacing back and forth, soaked to the bone but unwilling to leave. He didn't even know her name. All he knew was that she was alone. He stared through the glass as doctors surrounded her, their voices urgent, machines beeping steadily. After what felt like hours, a nurse came out and told him she was stable, but she was severely dehydrated, exhausted, and hadn't eaten properly for days. "She and the baby are safe for now," the nurse said softly, "but she'll need rest, care, and someone to be here for her." Aaron nodded. He didn't understand why, but he felt a strange sense of responsibility. Maybe it was guilt, maybe empathy, or maybe something deeper, the kind of silent pull that only comes from shared pain. When the woman finally woke up the next morning, sunlight was filtering through the window. She looked confused, frightened, and embarrassed. Aaron smiled gently from the corner of the room, sitting on a chair with a cup of coffee in his hands. "You're safe now," he said quietly. "I found you on the road last night. You fainted." Her eyes welled up with tears. I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to trouble anyone." Her voice was fragile, trembling with exhaustion and shame. "You didn't trouble anyone," Aaron said softly. "You needed help. That's all that matters." She nodded slowly, her hand resting on her stomach protectively. "My name's Clara," she said after a pause. "Thank you for helping me. I don't even know who you are." "Aaron," he replied simply. "Just someone who couldn't drive past." Over the next few days, Aaron visited the hospital whenever he could. He brought Clara meals, fruit, and even a small teddy bear for her unborn baby, something Nora insisted on giving. Clara was deeply touched by their kindness. As her health improved, she began to open up. She told Aaron about her story, how she had left her hometown after her husband abandoned her when he found out she was pregnant. She had tried to make it on her own, taking small jobs, living in temporary shelters, and walking miles to find work. But that rainy day, exhaustion and hunger had caught up to her. She had no family, no friends, and no one left to call. Aaron listened silently. Her words stirred old wounds in him, memories of losing his wife during childbirth, the loneliness that had nearly broken him afterward, and the endless struggle of raising Nora alone. Yet, somehow, seeing Clara's courage, her quiet strength despite her pain, reminded him of hope. When Clara was finally discharged, she had nowhere to go. The hospital offered temporary shelter, but Aaron couldn't bear to see her go back to uncertainty. He offered her a place to stay, his small, cozy home at the edge of town. "It's not much," he said awkwardly, "but it's warm, and Nora would love the company." Clara hesitated at first. She didn't want to intrude or become a burden. But Aaron's sincerity melted her doubts. She agreed just until she could stand on her own feet again. And so began a new chapter neither of them had expected. Days turned into weeks. The little house that had once echoed with silence now came alive with warmth and laughter. Nora adored Clara, often curling up beside her to feel the baby kick. Aaron found himself smiling again, really smiling, for the first time in years. He would come home to see Clara cooking, her gentle voice humming lullabies as she stirred soup on the stove. Sometimes he'd catch her standing by the window, gazing at the sunset, a quiet sadness flickering in her eyes. He wanted to ask about it, but something in her expression always stopped him. One evening, as rain began to fall again, Clara sat on the porch with a blanket around her shoulders. Aaron joined her, handing her a cup of tea. "You ever think about starting over?" he asked softly. She smiled faintly. "Every day," she said. "But it's hard when you feel like the world has already given up on you." Aaron looked at her for a long moment. "Then maybe it's time to stop waiting for the world," he said. "And start believing that second chances come in small acts, like stopping for someone in the rain."